shooting has intensified focus on the administration's use of the National Guard to crack down on crime in cities led by Democrats. Earlier, I spoke with Juliette Kayyem, faculty director of the Harvard University Kennedy School's Homeland Security Project. She was an assistant DHS secretary during the Obama administration and oversaw the Massachusetts National Guard when she was that state's Homeland Security advisor. Juliette, this morning you wrote for The Atlantic, where you're a contributing writer, that this was a terrible and avoidable tragedy. Explain that.
Well, for the last several months, since President Trump has deployed the National Guard to D.C., there's been a number of assessments by the military, including the commanding officers of the National Guard, that these units were essentially sitting targets, that they were vulnerable to nefarious actors, whether criminals or terrorists. And there was growing concern about this within the National Guard. Part of that had to do with that they were fully clothed, that they were in uniform, that they were visible to someone who may want to harm them, but that their mission, right, either walking the streets, doing beautification programs, just sort of, paying attention, which generally was the mission, was nebulous enough to make it very difficult to protect them in the way that you might protect troops either in a war or on a base.
The president almost immediately announced he's sending 500 more National Guard troops to Washington. Is that a solution?
It's really not. I mean, it's a sort of fallacy to think more is better, especially when it comes to deployments anywhere by the military. The question isn't really about whether the force can be protected. The question is whether the mission, what the mission is and how it is defined. Then you can figure out what force protection is about. The president, as we all know, wanted the National Guard in D.C. despite decreasing crime rates there because he viewed it as a war zone or too much crime there. We now know over the last couple months, these National Guard units have been used for roaming patrols, visibility patrols, or in many instances, sort of landscaping, picking up trash. None of that's bad per se, but none of that is unique to the National Guard, nor is it what they're trained to do. And it's in that sort of gray area that you create these vulnerabilities, as we saw for the National Guard. Adding more doesn't really solve the problem of what is the mission and how is it defined for the troops who we all want to protect.
Talk about a little bit about that. What's the mission? Is this a mission that the National Guard is suited for?
No, I mean, I have worked with the National Guard all my career. The National Guard supports civilian efforts in a disaster or in a homeland, or is deployed abroad. This, as we all know, is a unique and some say illegal use by the president of the National Guard in D.C. The National Guard is essentially federalized automatically. It reports to the president, and so the deployment of the National Guard, a unit that's not trained to units that are not trained to work in civilian areas and urban areas as armed without any standards of what the metrics are. Like, what is success for this mission? All of that creates a sort of a loose understanding of what the mission is, the potential for mission creep, and then, of course, vulnerabilities, because there's no notion of force protection. I mean, I sort of describe it as like neither war nor peace. The politics have thrust the National Guard into this gray zone that they're not built for, but that has made them vulnerable.
Administration officials are making much of the fact that the alleged shooter entered the United States under a Biden-era program for Afghans who were fleeing the Taliban, and that he was never vetted, that there were no background checks. What do you say to that?
What we understand now is that the alleged shooter had actually a number of vetting moments. Some occurred in Afghanistan. What the CIA director, the present CIA director, is saying now is that he did assist the CIA. We don't know in what exact capacity, but that he was assisting in intelligence and intelligence gathering efforts. He then is brought to the United States as Kabul is falling in a special visa program that does not grant permanent status. It was just a program that brought people in. They are then vetted during that process. And then again, as he's regularizing his process, he was granted asylum under the Trump administration this year. There is another vetting process. So at three different moments, he's examined by the United States, and either they missed something or something happened since he was granted asylum a few months ago that radicalized him relatively quickly. So I think it's premature to say, this administration was wrong and this one's right, or that agency was wrong and this one's right. I think we don't know. But what we do know is he's had strong ties to the United States for much of his life during the Afghan war, and in the last couple of months, at least, as he was granted asylum, he then begins to plan at least an attack on the National Guard that no one quite knows. No one can explain that yet, as far as we know.
The administration has paused immigration from Afghanistan, and they also say they're going to re-examine all the asylum grants under the Biden administration. What do you make of that?
I think in some ways the Trump administration doesn't quite know what happened. And so they want to look and see whether this special immigrant visa program that allowed Afghans to come in who supported us during the war is picking up the right sort of metrics for radicalization. That might be necessary at this stage, but the idea that you're going to pause indefinitely all Afghans who have come to the United States, or their ability to come here permanently, I think is at this stage sort of overblown, and also undermines our attempts to support the Afghans who were so instrumental in supporting us during the Afghan war. This is one person who did something absolutely heinous. We need to find out how he either got through the vetting process or what happened in terms of radicalization more recently. But the notion that this is about all Afghans is one that is undermined by the reality. Most Afghans are here lawfully and here because they supported our war effort in Afghanistan.
Juliette Kayyem, thank you very much.
Thank you.